Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So, the Clone Wars TV show is now finally over, and it's kind of sad. Especially considering how much better it's gotten since the show was first released more than 12 years ago. Now we know from Rebels and other media that Ahsoka and Rex both survived Order 66 with each other's help. But what happens in the decade or two in between the Clone Wars and the beginning of the Rebellion? Where did Ahsoka and Rex go? Well, let's start with the Captain because we have a lot less information on him. After Captain Rex and Ahsoka part ways, the clone captain eventually ends up meeting two other clones, former Commando Gregor and Commander Wolf. The three clones find a deserted planet called Selos and plan on living out the remainder of their lives in an old ATTE. It's a pretty boring retirement, although fishing for giant jupa is quite exciting. It might not seem like much to us, but for clones who never thought they would see freedom or have any options in life, this is probably as close to paradise as the clones could get. There is one problem though. Captain Rex and all of his brothers are aging twice the speed of your normal human beings. It was originally intended to allow the clones to mature faster and therefore cut down training time. And now it was quickly turning them into old men. The first time that Ahsoka Tano pops up again after the Clone Wars is a few months after Order 66 on the world of Tabeshka. It was controlled by a powerful family of smugglers known as the Ferris clan. They ran several legitimate businesses in order to cover the legal ones that they were running on the side. The party obviously didn't want to attract too much attention from the Empire, which is probably why Ahsoka chose this planet to venture to. Her existence during this time would have been similar to other Jedi in exile like Cal Kestis and Kanan Jarrus. She would have to keep a low profile, avoid getting too close to people, and constantly move from one location to another in case anyone recognizes her. On Thambeska, Ahsoka once again plies her ability to fix machines into a mechanic job with the Farty clan. One of the toughest things that a Jedi can face while in exile is any type of danger or injustice. A Jedi naturally wants to help other individuals, and in some cases, they need to use the Force to save someone from falling, or beating up some thugs who are bothering innocent civilians. In Ahsoka's case, few of the Farty clan children are playing around the dock area and a container almost falls on top of their head. Ahsoka, who has a pretty good moral compass, decides to save them by exposing herself and using the Force. Luckily for her, the children didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary. During the first Empire Day, which celebrates Palpatine's rise to power, Ahsoka's informed that Imperial guests were going to be visiting the Farty clan, and so she decides it's a good time to leave and steals one of their ships. Ahsoka would then travel to the moon of Rada, which was even more remote and sparsely populated. Its main source of income was farming and other agrarian pursuits. Tano was once again able to earn some credits by fixing droids and machines. She was eventually accepted by the community, given one of the abandoned houses, and she would become the town's mechanic. It was during this time that Ahsoka learned that there was a huge migration of aliens or non-humans out of the core worlds. This was thanks to the Empire's human high culture. It was a very forward-thinking, humanocentric form of speciesism that was quite beneficial for everyone involved. Ahsoka's peace on Rada would not last. One day, she awoke to the sight of an Imperial-class Star Destroyer hanging over the planet. Although the Empire had more permanent logistical supply chains, sometimes they would function like a raiding army in enemy territory and basically seize any resources they saw fit from the citizens of the Empire. This particular unit over Rada was interested in all of the food that the planet was producing. They weren't really here for Ahsoka, they didn't know she was there. But that still didn't mean that life under Imperial occupation was easy. The Empire would enforce new curfews, limit large group meetings, and restrict cantina operating hours and what they served. Tano was warned by the others to start preparing rations in case the Empire started taking food from the locals. She would also prepare a bug-out bag and some supplies, which she would stash in a cave outside of the settlement. The Empire then began conscripting locals to work in the fields to increase output. They also introduced new crops that were leaching all of the nutrients from the soil. Things were getting progressively worse, and the farmers were beginning to organize into an armed resistance, and Ahsoka Tano couldn't help but get involved. She realized that the farmers weren't really actually fighters, and if they tried to fight against the Empire, they would most likely get themselves killed. But she eventually gets pulled into their movement anyway and begins leading raids against Imperial forces on the planet. But the farmers were ill-equipped to fight the heavily armed stormtrooper garrisons as she predicted, and dozens of rebels fall in just one night of fighting around the Rada spaceport. To make matters worse, Ahsoka's presence on Rada drew the attention of the Sixth Brother, a Jedi hunting inquisitor in the employment of Darth Sidious. The Sixth Brother is quickly sent to Rada to track her down. At the same time, Tano's actions on Rada attracts the attention of Senator Bail Organa, a friend of the Jedi who had been appalled by Order 66 and the rise of the Empire. Bail, who had originally given R2-D2 and C-3PO to Captain Ramus Antilles to hold, sends R2 to track down Ahsoka. Ahsoka had left Rada by this point and was bouncing around from planet to planet, witnessing the beginning of the Imperial takeover of every system in the Outer Rim. She had also heard reports that the Empire had started a campaign against the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. Ahsoka ends up going back to the Ferris clan on Tavisca. There, one of the youngest children, who's Force-sensitive, tells Ahsoka that she's sensed some kind of shadow that's been stalking her on the planet. It turns out that the sixth brother was stationed on Tavisca before being reassigned to find Ahsoka. The Empire has also arrived onto the planet and started their occupation. Ahsoka decides once again to leave. R2-D2 eventually finds Ahsoka and arranges a meeting for her with Bail Organa on his ship, the Tantive 4. Organa asks her to join the rebellion. They could really use the help of a Jedi in their fight against the Empire. But Ahsoka refuses to command men into battle again after her less than stellar experience during the Clone Wars. But she is willing to help the rebellion if Bail Organa is willing to help her hide Force-sensitive children from the Inquisitors. Ahsoka's first mission on behalf of the rebellion would take place on Rada. The fight for the planet wasn't over just yet. The sixth brother had been scouring the planet for her, and he had already killed several farmers and resistance fighters and taken a few captive in order to goad her out of hiding. On a side note, on her way back to Rada, Ahsoka flies by Alum, the ancient Jedi world where youngsters go to find their first kyber crystals. The Empire had been busy strip mining the planet for kyber crystals that would be used in the Death Star. Anyway, once Ahsoka reaches Rada, she notices immediately that things have taken a turn for the worse. The Empire's crops were draining all of the life out of the soil of the planet, and most of her former friends had already been killed by the Imperial garrison on the planet. Ahsoka ends up confronting the Inquisitor. Despite not having any lightsabers, she's easily able to dodge his attack and eventually uses the Force to overload his lightsabers, killing him. Ahsoka then took the kyber crystal from his weapon, healed them with the Force, turning them white in color. Armed with these new white lightsabers, Ahsoka heads right towards the Imperial compound on Rada, where she goes and frees many of the farmers that are held there as prisoners. Shortly after, Bail Organa's fleet arrives with several transports and cargo ships, along with a wing of A-Wings. They take down the remaining Imperial defenses in the area and quickly evacuate all the remaining farmers before more Imperial forces arrive. Ahsoka returns to the Tantive 4 and overhears a conversation between Bail Organa and his daughter, Princess Leia Organa, who will soon be taking over her father's position in the Senate. Tano then debriefs Organa on what's happened during the mission. Although the sixth brother was a former Jedi, he was actually quite weak in the Force and not very skilled. But unfortunately, most likely wasn't the last Inquisitor the rebellion would see. Organa agrees to take on the Rada refugees and settles them on Alderaan, where I'm sure they'll be safe for many generations to come. If there are two things in Star Wars that are a permanent fixture and will never change, it's Alderaan and the Jedi Order. Anyway, Ahsoka is still not really sure about her role in the rebellion. She was still trying to process everything that's happened to her since she was framed for the Jedi Temple bombing, kicked out of the Order, and then returned just to witness Order 66. Her former friend Bear Zophii, the one who had framed her for the Jedi Temple bombing, had been right. The Jedi Order had lost their way supporting the Republic's not-so-just war. Even though Ahsoka wants nothing to do with this new war, everywhere she goes she witnesses suffering and injustice, and she can't help but get involved. In my opinion, Ahsoka Tano had a clearer view of what's right and wrong than any other Jedi in the Order. Even at a young age, she never fit into the ends justify the mean school of thought that a lot of Jedi seem to have adopted in order to swiftly end the war. Her evolution to becoming a great Jedi is finally what allows her to be herself, unaffiliated with no hierarchy telling her what to do or to go against her own personal moral code. See, the Jedi Code was there for those who were lost and needed guidance, something that Ahsoka Tano never needed, whether she realized it or not. Shortly after the evacuation of Rada, Ahsoka Tano establishes the rebellion's first intelligence network. She personally adopts the codename Fulcrum and becomes its first agent. Now, when I first saw the Clone Wars, I wasn't a huge fan of Ahsoka Tano. I thought she was way too young and kind of stupid, but as the Clone Wars series progressed, she became more interesting and a more in-depth and realistic character. I'm kind of sad to see her go, but if you wanted to see more of her, you guys can always check out the Rebels TV show. It's not as good as the Clone Wars, in my opinion, but it's not bad if you still have an itch. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.